Vernacular museums are homegrown, grassroots museums that have been appearing during a time of extensive economic, political, and social change in Romania. Collecting and displaying objects from the past within one's own personal museum has become a way for the museum makers who are a part of this study to respond to the scope and scale of these changes and their effects on everyday life. Vernacular museums provide an exemplary case for studying embodied knowledge making because of how visitors experience these museums through an awareness of their distinctness from institutional museums. In my visits to 4 of these museums, each maker's perspective emerged as a distinct story of the museum as a world. This maker in Tasca, Montana, included geological samples within the traditional home that housed his museum, foregrounding his professional life as a geologist who had worked in the region's now defunct copper mine. This notable moment emphasized how we've engaged aspects of local life through different senses. As a longtime inhabitant of the village, this maker conveyed aspects of his lived experience as emblematic of changes in village life. Museum makers foreground their own personal perspectives about the past and its relationship to the present through their particular selection and arrangement of objects. These embroidered objects, made to hold brushes and combs, are tangible evidence of the difference between then and now. The maker at Galoș Petreu contrasted past and present in this example of how girls used to spend time embroidering utilitarian objects versus now scrolling through their phones. While both activities involve repetitive gestures, the activity of embroidery provides evidence of how time was spent in the form of a material object that survives. In contrast, scrolling through phones was a gesture with a seeming lack of value for this maker. Narratives foregrounded aspects of the past to remedy problems in the present. Here, the traditional forms of baskets invoke problems of sustainability. This was at the museum at Iaz, demonstrating how this maker, a young woman in her 30s, was focusing her values. This maker's desire to create a museum grew from her wanting to keep a memory of her grandmother, a very personal project that has expanded to include such commentaries on lifestyle choices. My experiences visiting these museums underscored knowledge-making as a transformative process enhanced by encounters with each maker's idiosyncratic presentation, refracted through the material arrangements of everyday objects and ordinary knowledge. Here, we see old photographs that the museum maker in Hatzeg took of regular people doing everyday things. They also illustrate aspects of life that are lost, things we can no longer see. But the museum at Hatzeg was also a collection of contrasts. Old and new objects were juxtaposed and mixed to reveal this collector's eye, style, and an ability to interpret the value of objects as embodying daily life practices. This example demonstrates how vernacular museums combine space and materiality through the vision of their creator and attach them to a locality and a community. The activities of reordering and re-envisioning the past through object displays emphasize the affective and material dimensions that are intrinsic to museum making as an epistemic activity. Museum makers were portrayed as stewards of knowledge from the past who provide alternative perspectives on heritage. Personal understandings and interpretations became the focus, as opposed to official or objective histories and truths. Visitors emphasized how their vernacular museum experiences stood out because of the person-to-person connection created with the museum maker. These museums provided a reason for visitors to stop in places that they might not otherwise. The idea of the museum as a familiar institutional form was the draw, but the personal and intimate nature of the museum tour, located in a home, contrasted with visitor expectations. Vernacular museums are emerging as hybrid cultural institutions that insert personal, local, and individual perspectives beyond strict public, private, or state-corporate cultural binaries. The vernacular museums that I studied have gained visibility, yet they have not been officially recognized within the legal definitions of museums and collections. However, this in-between or unofficial status allows them to capitalize on their role as cultural sites that contrast with and offer commentary on more official institutional representations of heritage.